What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the All About the Birds weekly report, our Wednesday night show here on the AAT Sports Network and AATBirds. I am Chip, a Chip for the Birds, joined as always by Johnny U at Johnny U9322. And as it is the beginning officially of Eagles season, as we do every single week, we bring on someone from the opposition for the Opposition Outlook section. And this week, returning to the show is our good buddy Dave Birkett. He is from, is it the Detroit Free Press? What it's
there you go.
You work for the Lions as the Detroit Free Press.
Definitely not
the Free Press. Definitely not for the Lions. So we might get some more in-depth, some nitty-gritty about it. Dave, I have to know, because I watched in its entirety Hard Knocks this season. And I have to know, how accurate does HBO portray this Lions team?
I thought the series was well done, right? The production value is obviously very good. You know, what you saw from Dan Campbell, what you saw from the assistant coaches, that is 100% who they are. You know, that's not them playing for the cameras or doing anything like that. So that was absolutely an accurate depiction of them. Certainly, I think there are some storylines that they didn't cover or go in depth on, including some of the main, I think, storylines when it comes to the Lions this year. You know, Jared Goff, this is really a make or break season for him. You know, Jeff Okudah coming back from a torn Achilles tendon. You know, he's going to be a big focal point of I think, people this season early on, especially, you know, Jameson Williams, you know, coming back from his injury. They didn't cover him at all. New offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson. So they didn't hit on some of the main storylines that I think most Lions fans have been focused on going into the season. But what you saw was 100% accurate about who Dan Campbell and who some of his assistant coaches are.
Yeah, and you know, one thing I want to bring up with this team is kind of like, what's the outlook that a lot of the fans are having, you know, with Hard Knocks. That kind of, you know, it puts them onto a pedestal there. And, you know, what they had, you know, the way the coaches are, a lot of tough losses last year. What's kind of the expectations of the Lions this year?
Yeah, people are optimistic here in Detroit. And, I think nationally too, and maybe some of that is because, Chip, as you mentioned, right, seeing them on Hard Knocks and, you know, Dan's an easy guy to root for, I think, when you see him in that setting and you see players sort of, you know, all in pulling for him too. But yeah, look, locally, I think the Lions have finished last place in the NFC North 4 straight years. And they're coming off a season that was pretty miserable by everyone's account, right? 3-13-1. And they lost their first 10 games. I think it was, they just didn't play well early on, but they started to maybe find a little something at the end of the year. You know, Jared Goff won 3 of his last 6 starts. And, you know, I think there's hope that what they found late last season can carry over. They've improved the roster. You know, Goff looks a lot more comfortable. Obviously, they had the number 2 overall pick, Aiden Hutchinson. So I don't think anyone here believes that this is, you know, a team that's contending for the Super Bowl yet. But when they look around and they see some of the talent and you know, they believe in the, you know, the buy-in from players to what Dan is selling, I think a lot of people think that this should be a step forward season for the Lions.
You mentioned Dan Campbell, and, you know, last year before he started coaching the Lions, he got an interesting rap about him with the whole, you know, biting of kneecaps and doing things like that. And then you kind of watch him in the Hard Knocks. Again, we're just going to keep talking about Hard Knocks because I know a little bit about the Detroit Lions now because of the
Everybody
show.
does right now, as I get it, yeah.
And you get to see that he's really a player's coach. So you being kind of an outside observer, what is it that you expect to see as far as growth goes with Dan Campbell this season as a head coach in the NFL?
Yeah, no, that's a fair question, because I think, you know, he would tell you he was learning last year too, right? He had the interim gig for 12 games at Miami, and certainly last year was a learning you know, process for him too. And the one thing that he said, and he's really focused on this and mentioned this in spring, right, was succeeding in some of those gotta have it situations, for lack of a better term, right? They focused a lot on third downs and red zone and, you know, 2-minute drives, and, you know, every team does. So that's not like wholly new, but they focused on that early on. And I think Dan would tell you that, you know, he needs to be better in some of those situations too. He was calling plays at the end, some of his use of timeouts or game management, 4th down decisions. I'm all for the aggressive coaching decisions when it comes to that. And I don't think Dan will change much. He was as aggressive as any coach in the NFL last season. But maybe there are some little tweaks within that. And maybe some things that we won't even notice just in terms of the play calling and how aggressive he is with some of that stuff that maybe can help the Lions get a few more wins in those situations.
So I'm going to kind of veer off a little bit on the Hard Knocks, but I want to kind of talk of a little situation that the Lions have. They put Vaitai on IR, and his backup, basically Tommy Kramer, was out of practice. And then also Frank Ragnow was also limited at practice. So what is the situation with the Lions offensive line right now and the shuffling that's kind of going on?
Yeah, I wish I had a really good answer for you here, but it's something we're trying to figure out ourselves a little bit right now. I mean, the Ragnow thing kind of came out of nowhere a little bit. He played all their entire starting offensive line, including Big V, played, about a half in their last preseason game. And Vaitai suffered that injury maybe early on in the game. He stayed in. They put him on IR earlier this week. And so, it seemed like, hey, maybe Kramer, if he's back, he's going to be the guy. He didn't play in that last preseason game either. If not, Dan had said earlier this week that they had, a number of options. And I'll tell you, one of them that he mentioned that I just didn't really think was a distinct possibility until today was moving Penei Sewell from right tackle to right guard. It sort of seems like, why would you move a tackle inside, especially a guy like Sewell who's entering year 2, and they bounced them around between both tackle positions last year, so he would seem to benefit from staying home at one position. But I don't know that they don't have many better options, especially if that Ragnow injury is something that might keep him out. And I don't know that it is yet. You mentioned he was just limited today, and I don't have a clear read on what we're talking about in terms of how serious that is. A groin injury with Ragnow we're talking about. But if that's the case, Evan Brown goes and plays center, and then you're left with at the right guard spot, either moving Logan Stenberg, who's played pretty much exclusively left guard, and he's played about a half dozen snaps in his 2-year NFL career, either starting him against a really good Eagles interior defensive line, or maybe you move Sewell to guard and you have a more experienced tackle in Matt Nelson who can play the right tackle spot.
So it's interesting to me that you mentioned, a lot of this offensive line shifting. And you also mentioned earlier that this is kind of a make or break year for Jared Goff. And I remember talking to you last year, and it was, you had just traded Matt Stafford, who then goes on to win a Super Bowl. So it's what does Jared Goff have to do in order to kind of cement himself here in Detroit, especially because you've gone through the ring of backup quarterbacks, especially just in this offseason with Blau, with Boyle, and now your backup is the one and the only Nate Sudfeld.
Eagles fans know him well.
Too well.
Yeah. Well, look, let me be clear too on the offensive line thing. I would not move Sewell. I would keep him at right tackle. I just think, you weaken yourself at right tackle to maybe get better at guard. And I understand, you got Fletcher Cox in there and Hargrave you're worried about, but I would keep him outside and, maybe roll the dice inside a little bit. But, look, for Goff, I think it just comes down to winning. Like Jared Goff is, he's probably never going to be, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, that tier of that very top tier of quarterback, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, all those guys that we commonly think of as being the best in the NFL. But what the Lions have done this year is they surrounded him with as much talent as they could. I mean, I think the Lions are like 3rd in the NFL in cap spend on the offensive side of the ball. So they're trying to give him enough weapons and build a young defense that they can sort of come together and have some success. And ultimately, the Lions have 2 first-round picks next year, their own and the Rams. And if we're talking about, a 4-win team or something, a 5-win team, and they're picking in the top 10 again, there's a pretty good chance they're going to take a quarterback.
Sure.
If the Lions win 8 games and, if they're picking 17th, they're probably not taking a quarterback there, or I don't know that, the quarterback that they'd be able to get with the resources they have, how much sense that would make for them. And who knows how these quarterbacks, pan out in college or what they look like come the draft in the spring. But at that point, you've taken a big enough step forward that all of a sudden maybe it makes more sense to, hey, we need a cornerback, so let's spend that pick on a cornerback, and then that second, first round pick we have, maybe let's go spend that on a new right guard to replace a Vaitai, and all of a sudden you're looking, if you're the Lions and think that you have a pretty good, nucleus on your roster that Jared Goff can win with.
So I want to kind of shift over to the defensive side of the ball, talk a little bit about that, because number one pick Aiden Hutchinson, he's basically he's a player that they're going to need to count on. And like you mentioned, Jeff Okudah coming off an injury, also a very high draft pick back in 2020. What are the emphasis of the defensive side of the ball when you're looking at the players there that they're basically counting on?
Yeah, look, the Lions are, as they're not old on offense, but as invested as they have been on that side of the ball with some of the moves they've made. The entire offensive line, they got 3 first-round picks there, and trading up for Jamison Williams, signing DJ Chark, their one big free agent expenditure. They are very young defensively, and they think it's a group that can sort of grow together. So realistically, they're probably going to have a few more growing pains on that side of the ball. They don't have a lot of playmakers. The depth there is suspect, especially in the back seven. But Hutchinson is a guy that really, he has lived up to every expectation the Lions have had for him so far. He's looked the part in training camp. I think he is as relentless as they say. That motor is just runs nonstop, and he's going to be able to provide some pressure off the edge. So the hope from the Lions standpoint is that with Aiden Hutchinson on one side, Charles Harris on the other, maybe they can generate enough pressure on opposing quarterbacks to really help out that back end where Okudah's coming back from the ruptured Achilles. And again, they just have question marks on that back seven, personnel wise and depth wise.
So now going into this first game against the Eagles, I mean, obviously we, as Eagles fans, are pretty high up on this team based on the roster additions we have, based on the kind of the arc of which we're traveling. What do you expect to see in this game on Sunday?
Yeah, no, I think there's good reason for optimism in Philadelphia. I mean, look, I'm probably not as high on Jalen Hurts as some people in Philadelphia are, but I recognize that as a dual threat quarterback and with the weapons that he has around him in the receiving core right now, that can be a successful offense. And I think the Eagles defense obviously has some very good pieces both up front and in the back end. We know Darius Slay well, and obviously getting Bradbury I think sort of rounds out that secondary. So from the Lions standpoint, Dan said earlier this week that he expects Philadelphia to attack them very much the same way that they did last year, and that's both offensively and defensively, because that was such a lopsided game in the Eagles' favor. And so
right.
I think it comes down to, we're going to run it, and shove it down your throat until you prove you can stop us. That's what the Lions expect, at least. And some of that is stopping Jalen Hurts, and some of that is stopping, Miles Sanders or whoever else is in the backfield. And then defensively, I went back and was reading a little bit. It seemed like, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe the Eagles were a little more aggressive that game against Detroit than they had been, at various points throughout the year before that. And so maybe, I think their front is good enough that they don't have to do much exotic to get pressure on Jared Goff. But, I think they had 5 or 6 sacks in that game, and the Lions had some fumble problems. They recovered most of their fumbles, but they put the ball on the carpet. So if the Eagles can generate similar pressure, that could be an issue for the Lions, especially with that beat up offensive line.
So with that, with what you're talking with there, I want to kind of get your key matchup that you're, or that you're watching, or for people to watch this game, like one key matchup that you would say for this game.
To me, it's got to be whoever is on the interior of the Lions offensive line against Fletcher Cox and, Hargrove and those people. I mean, it's throw Jordan Davis in the mix there too, just because there's so much uncertainty, right? Frank Ragnow, if he's at center, he's a really good player. He was a Pro Bowler a couple of years ago. And, I think he'd stand up pretty well against Fletcher Cox, as big as Fletcher is in the middle. Frank he did not play in that game last year. He was out for the season by that point. If he's not there, if it's Evan Brown, Evan played well, but he's maybe not quite as stout in there as Frank is. And if you don't have your regular right guard too, whoever that is, whether that's Sewell or someone else, I just think that's an area that if I'm the Eagles coaches, I'm talking about exploiting right now based on personnel alone.
So we're gonna dig deep down on the Lions depth chart here for a second, because we do have, besides having, Nate Sudfeld on your team now, former Eagle, right. And a lot of your coaches are being former Eagles, between Deuce Staley and Hank Fraley and all those guys. You do have somebody who was never an Eagle but grew up in the Philadelphia area as your third string running back, Craig Reynolds, who went to Kutztown University, which is where I went to college. So I know the guy a little bit. I know some of his stats. I know a lot of what he can do. What are they saying in Detroit about Mr. Craig Reynolds?
Yeah, look, you obviously watch Hard Knocks, and so how much they like him and what they said about him. DeAndre Swift is the number one running back, and that's pretty clear cut. And Jamal Williams is the number two running back, and that's pretty clear cut as well. But the Lions only have 3 running backs on their roster, and Craig is the guy that I don't know how many carries he's going to get, especially early in the season when everyone is healthy, but. He's probably going to return kicks for them. He's going to play in special teams. He is a guy that sort of coming out of nowhere last year, he showed some ability running the ball and some vision running the ball. And so the Lions are, they like what they have in their backfield and with all 3 of those guys. Like I said, Swift is so important to this team in the backfield that I don't think you'll see Craig Reynolds much on offense, but when and if it comes to that at some point in the season, this is a guy that had 100 yards in one of his games when he got called off the squad last year. So the Lions are confident that he can be an effective running back in the NFL.
Yeah, his 100 yards won me a fantasy game just because I'm just going to put him on as a Kutztown guy, and I played him, and all of a sudden I look, I'm like, oh man, he got me some points, and it was great. And now the world knows a little bit more about him as well. All right, so as we do with all of our guests during Opposition Outlook, we've already asked you for your matchups. We've gotten the lay of the land, and we know a little bit about these Detroit Lions. But what we need from you is a prediction for the game on Sunday and the score, if you'd like to offer.
Yeah, I wish I had it in front of me, what I picked for my my season game-by-game picks. That's running tomorrow on our website, freak.com. I picked the Eagles. Look, I don't know that, this isn't going to be a blowout like it was last year. I think the Lions are much better, and I think there were some other factors that went into that last year. I was right before the bye. The Lions changed offensive play callers, after that game. So I think they're a much more cohesive unit this year. I think it's a relatively close game. I wish I had that in front of me. I think I have the Eagles winning by 4 points, let's say 27-23, somewhere in that neighborhood. It should be a good crowd in Detroit, right? Opening day. There's a lot of expectations for this team, so I expect it to be a pretty charged atmosphere. But ultimately, the Eagles just have a little too much talent, and I think that puts them over the top. Too many ways both to score and to get after you defensively. Sure. So I think the Eagles win a close game.
Do you have I know you mentioned you're running an article on it tomorrow, your predictions. Do you have in your memory what you predicted the Lions to finish at this year?
Yeah, it's funny because I had them 7-10 when when the schedule came out, and I redid it, and I actually had them winning 8 games, and I sat on it for a few days because I wrote it when I was in Indianapolis for the Lions joint practices, and I was like, man, am I being too much of a homer here, buying into some of the hype a little too much by picking them to win 8 games, which seems weird, right? 8 games, that's not a great record, 8-9. But, I know there's part of the fan base that looks at this team and says, it's the same old Lions and they're not going to win 8 games. And then there are some people out there that are like, 8 wins? What are you, crazy? Look at our schedule. We play the Jaguars and the Bears twice and the Panthers and the Giants and the Jets. Like that's, 5 wins right there, right? It's the Seahawks. Sure. The Lions have one of the easiest schedules in the NFL. So, I think I had the Lions going 8-9. I think they take a big step forward this year, but I don't think it's quite enough to get in that playoff conversation.
It's not a bad one. There you go.
I mean, and as you mentioned, it's an improvement in that, Dan Campbell keeps his job at that point. I think if they finish in that three win realm, you start having conversations about hot seats. But from everything we saw, I mean, he is a player's coach, and that goes a long way. I mean, he's definitely building something there. So now it's just, can it translate on the field?
People, even if he wins 3 games, I don't think he's in any jeopardy. There will be talk, obviously, right? They need to show they need to take a step forward, but there is, this organization was in bad shape under Matt Patricia, and Dan Campbell has, he's really galvanized the organization and done some good things. And so, look, he expects to take a step forward. I think everyone in the organization does. What exactly that looks like, who knows? There's a lot of things that are involved with that, injuries and luck and all that good stuff. Again, the Lions have, people, I'm sure most Eagle fans haven't gone into the weeds on the Lions schedule, but they legitimately do play. I did my power rankings, right? And I think I had, the Lions in like the, 22nd, 23rd, something like that. Of the, let's call it 8 teams below the Lions, they play like 7 games against those 8 teams. So like that, it's a very manageable schedule. When you play the Seahawks and the Jaguars and the Jets and the Giants and the Bears twice. I mean, you're playing some of the real dregs of the NFL this year.
Yeah.
So there is some room for maybe an upside surprise from the Lions this year, where maybe the record looks even better than the product on the field.
So, Dave, we always, as we appreciate you joining us. Why don't you tell the people where they can find you, where they can read your stuff, plug your stuff a little bit, and then we'll let you get going out there in Detroit land.
Yeah, no, check it out. Freep.com. That's, Free Press. We call it the Freep out here in Detroit. So Freep.com. All this stuff is up there, and you can always hit me up on Twitter at Dave Birkett, just to talk Lions or football or whatever. Always try to engage with fans as much as possible. It's not quite as easy these days when, you got the kids running around to a million different activities,
Sure.
But hey, football season is upon us. And so I know lots of people want to talk about the Lions or whatever else is going around the NFL.
No, we thank you for coming on. Really appreciate your time to break down the Lions.
Yeah, you got it. We'll see you guys. Enjoy the game and enjoy the season. Hopefully the Eagles give you plenty to cheer about this year.
Hopefully. That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah.
All right, Dave. Thanks. All right, so lot to digest there. I don't feel as confident as Dave does about his Lions.
Well, with me, like reading over some things, and I had to bring up the offensive line issues because that basically just came out today. And
Sure.
I feel if it comes to the point where Frank Ragnow is not going to be able to play because he is a Pro Bowl level center. He is a very, very good anchor in the middle of that offensive line. And Taylor Decker, their left tackle, is a top left tackle in this league. And Penei Sewell is a young player, very athletic right tackle. But again, if Vaitai is out, we know he's on IR, and Tommy Kramer was out, that's their backup. If he's out and then Ragnow's out, if they're shuffling the middle of that line, and the way the Eagles defense interior wise with Cox, with Jordan Davis, with Milton Williams, with Javon Hargrave, and then you have throwing in there possibly some blitzes up the middle there, and you have Hassan Reddick and Sweat and Brandon Graham. So you have so many different things that the Eagles can do. I feel it's going to bode well for them. Now, again, it's the first week of the year, so anything is possible, but you're looking at the Detroit Lions, and they may take a step in the right direction. How big of a step that's going to be, that I don't know. But looking at their defense, and if the Eagles are going to play the way they played in that preseason game against a team like the Jets, who I'm going to kind of pair like the Jets and Lions, almost kind of like both young rosters, a lot of high draft picks. It's just, I think the Eagles offensively, if they're going to do what we think they're going to do, they can be able to expose the young Lions. But again, you can't take any team for granted, especially week 1.
I think it's even more than that. I honestly do feel that, this Lions team does have a lot of question marks, which the Eagles were there last year. The Eagles had a lot of question marks last year, and they answered a lot of them. The Lions, when we played them last year, were 0-8, and they got their absolute asses stomped 44-6. It was one of the best games of the season. I loved it. This Lions team isn't that different. This Lions team didn't add a lot of, you heard him mention that they added DJ Chark. Okay. But same quarterbacks, same running backs, same tight ends. Defense added Aiden Hutchinson. That's what the defense did. So to me, with the Eagles getting significantly better and the Lions staying the same, I don't see this being a 4-point game. I see this being a slapdown. Now, the only thing that does concern me, and I've mentioned this before, is how little the starters played this preseason. I do feel there will be an element of rust. So when the ass kicking begins, it will be in the second half.
But did you happen to mention the last thing that Dave said when he was talking about the offensive line? The last thing he said about the offensive line played about the first half of the last preseason game. And early in that game, Vaitai got hurt and he played through it. And did Ragno get hurt? Partially a little bit hurt in that game too. And Kramer didn't play in that game. So yes, there's the aspect of why did the starters play more? But then you also have the flip side of it. And if you play too much, you get hurt. So I'm okay with it. In my opinion with it, I'm okay with it because of all the joint practices. You have that, it's more of a controlled environment, but
right. But even with the joint, and I don't mean to cut you off, but even with the joint practices, they basically had a bye week last week.
Yeah.
They did not play the starters the last 2 weeks of actual preseason games and game time. Jalen Hurts, for example, has not played meaningful football or taken a meaningful hit in almost a full month.
Yeah.
That's my only concern. I don't think that this game is going to be a problem. But that's my only concern is, does this Eagles team show rust in the first half before snapping into it and kicking ass in the second?
And that's the thing. We're gonna see what they do. All these weapons that they have on the offensive side of the ball, how they're gonna use them, how they're gonna use the middle of the field, because Jalen Hurts did not throw that much in the middle of the field. It was about, I guess, 10% of his throws were in the middle of the field, which was about, I believe, 6% lower than the average. So you're going to want to see more of that. And again, how much are they going to run the ball? Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell, what they're going to do there. There's a lot of questions because we want to see what this team's going to do offensively and defensively. What are they going to look like on the defensive side of the ball? How are they going to run the defense? Are they going to be very aggressive and blitzing? What are they going to do? Because again, last year, Jonathan Gannon didn't have the personnel to be able to run a scheme that, to be able to attack opposing offenses. And what Dave was talking about last year's matchup is I feel the Eagles were so aggressive because they knew this Lions team wasn't like the teams they played earlier in the year. Teams like the Kansas City Chiefs and, teams that had these star-studded quarterbacks. They know what Detroit was when they're going into that game. And I think it may bode the same way this year. They may be, uber aggressive, but again, to me, I think it's going to be a fun game because I feel the offense is going to give you enough, but I feel like defense is going to go to that point of really be fun to watch because they're going to be able to get at the quarterback. They're going to be able to make plays in the second level. I just think it's going to be a fun watch because Jared Goff, he's not terrible, but he's not an elite quarterback. And I feel like they'll be able to, because he's not a quarterback that's going to be able to scramble and run. No. So if they're able to get a pass rush, it's going to bode so well for the defense, for Darius Slay, Bradbury, for Gardner Johnson, for Marcus Epps, for the secondary Maddox. It's going to be able to bode well for them to be able to make plays. So that's one thing that I'm hoping for and ready to watch for.
So before we get into some of these other things, let's kind of do a recap on the moves that the Eagles have made over the last week, because there have been a flurry of moves, as there usually are, including adding players to the practice squad, cutting players from the practice squad, taking players that were on the practice squad after we traded for great safeties and letting them go. I mean, give me some of the transactions that the Eagles have done over the last week to kind of get the roster to where it is.
So the one key one was the Andre Dillard injury. It's not something that came off the roster, but it's an issue that happened that he's now placed on the IR. So he's out at least 4 weeks. But I guess a break in the forearm is the noted thing. He said 4 to 6 weeks he's out. So that takes him out. Now they have 52 men on the roster. I don't think they're going to add somebody because that guarantees the contract. There's this whole little scheme thing there. So again, they can still elevate 2 players from the practice squad, which I expect them to do for week 1. But along the lines of the practice squad, Anthony Harris is no longer on the practice squad. They gave him the release, terminated his contract from the practice squad to give him an opportunity to latch on with the team's 53-man active roster, which is
the right move. It was the right move. Look, I would love to continue having Anthony Harris as far as a locker room presence and having him as a fail-safe, but dude deserves to start. He did everything right. He shouldn't be on the practice squad, just kind of stowed away. Let him have the opportunity. And then if it works out that he comes back to Philadelphia, I'm okay with that too.
Yeah. And they got rid of a couple players from the practice squad. LaMichael Pirine, sorry, Mike. Mike Bowers, one of his favorite players, is no longer.
We knew him for so long.
Yeah, exactly. And Reed Sinnett is no longer on the practice squad. You don't need Reed Sinnett on the practice squad if you have Ian Book as your third QB developmental type of guy who's going to sit basically every week. You don't need another quarterback on the practice squad, taking up a spot there. So they signed Dalton Keene, who's a tight end. He was a former 4th-round pick from Virginia Tech from the Patriots. So they signed him to the practice squad, another tight end, because Richard Rodgers was signed by the Chargers. So you don't have that opportunity to get a
Okay, so I missed that transaction.
So that's a big reason. And then they also signed a wide receiver formerly of the Atlanta Falcons this year, and he played with the Cincinnati Bengals for a couple seasons. Auden Tate, 6'5", 225-pound, big receiver. I could possibly see him getting some run this year, but it gives him time to develop on the practice squad. He's still only 25 years old, so it gives you a big-time target there. But again, not too many moves, but a couple things that happen. Like, the roster is ever moving in terms of people shuffling all the time, but that's kind of where we're at right now. I do expect 2 players to be moved up from the practice squad to the active roster. My guesses would be LaRaven Clark because you want that extra tackle, extra offensive lineman. And then I believe my guess would be Britton Covey, just to have a return man, an option there, a guy that could play special teams. That would be my guess on the 2 players that would get activated. Now you can activate 2 players each week if you'd like, with all the new practice squad rules.
Well, and I find it interesting that you're saying Britton Covey because when they're talking to our special teams coordinator, he's kind of playing his cards a little close, saying, we're not going to let you know who our return man is until, 12:01 on Sunday.
1-on-1 on Sunday, I think.
1-on-1 on Sunday when they're back to returning kick. And right now, according to the depth chart, it is Quez Watkins listed as our return man. I don't foresee that being the case moving forward. I just feel like Quez Watkins is too important to this team. And they are really they're carrying A.J. Brown, Zach Pascal, Devontae Smith, and Quez Watkins. Yeah, so they're carrying 4 receivers. So bringing up Britton Covey as a 5th receiver, but also as your special teams guy, seems more likely. I don't want to see Gainwell or Boston Scott back there again, just because I don't think they add anything to your return game. I just don't.
I think the kickoff returns, I believe you probably will see Boston Scott. That's just my opinion there. But punt return, like I said, that's why I think Covey gets the nod there with that. But it's to me, it's you want to be able to have someone reliable. Covey was a star punt returner in college for Utah. I want someone with experience. I don't want the debacle that you had years ago. I believe it was 2007. Remember the Green Bay game when they had Greg Lewis back there? And 2 muffs, and there was a lot of problems with that. Also because J.R. Reed had an unfortunate injury, and he had all that stuff going on too. But to me, I don't want that situation where you have to rely on someone that isn't fully not I'm not gonna say comfortable, but isn't, a pro at doing it, isn't used to doing it in game. Because in practice, yeah, you can do it, but when it comes to a game when guys are barreling down at you, and you just don't want to have to make those mistakes, and you don't want that to happen because, to me, it's just I think Covey's the guy that you have to do it. I don't think anyone else on the roster in terms of the practice squad can do that. Devin Allen, I don't think he's a guy that can do that either. So I think
I like it. I like his speed. I just don't think. I mean, Britton Covey is explosive with space.
Yeah, and I think it helps you. It's the aspect of, Greg Ward's no longer. Well, he's on IR, but he's a guy that could, he didn't muff punts. He didn't make any much out of the punt returns, but
he was consistent.
Yeah, exactly. He was consistent, and that's what you need. So that's just my feel on that. But no, it's for me, it's just I'm excited for this game. I'm excited for football to be back, and that's the one main thing. I'm just excited if Sundays, got the football back, and the weather's going to get cooler, hopefully, and be able to have that nice, cool, crisp weather. Leaves changing, it's football time, and I'm ready for it.
Are you also ready for this?
It's time for the Ulecka locks of the week. Who's your lock?
So I do have Mike's lock, and I have his prediction. I got it before since he's not on the show tonight. He'll be back next week, but I'll give you his lock. And then we can give ours. His Ulecka lock is that Miles Sanders is going to get a rushing TD.
Yeah, because last season he got nothing.
Yeah. Last season he had the good old goose egg, but Mike's going with he gets the rushing touchdown this week. Start off week 1, he gets that numeral uno. So, what's your Ulecka lock?
I got Jalen Hurts, 250.
Okay.
And 3 total touchdowns.
Okay.
I think he's going to go 2-1 passing to run ratio. I almost said 4 total. You know what? No, I'm going to go 4. I'm going to go 4 total touchdowns.
Ooh. It doesn't have to
and 4
be
touchdowns.
This game. You can do any game.
I know, but I'm one game at a time.
Okay. I'm sticking with this game too. I don't know why I'm even saying that. Like, I'm telling you, it's only one, not this game, but I'm going to go with Dallas Goedert. I'm going to stick on this Dallas Goedert train. With the predictions, I made a prediction there. Dallas Goedert is going to have 90 yards receiving and a touchdown. So I think he's going to have a great game. You're looking at the Detroit Lions, who linebackers are Alex Anzalone. They have Chris Board, Malcolm Rodriguez. I feel like the middle of the field, Dallas Goedert can exploit. And
yeah,
I feel like this is a type of game where he can get you those big numbers and to be able to, put up those stats, those numbers that we were hoping to see. Because if you're able to run the ball, it's going to open up so much more for everybody. But I'm going to go with Dallas Goedert, 90 yards and a touchdown on Sunday.
I think
I
that's
gotta make
fair.
sure I write Goddard because I put 90 yards in a TD. I won't remember who was for. But how about we do this? Do you want to do the sponsors and then we'll get into the prediction and wrap up?
I love it. So we have a lot of great sponsors here on the AAT Sports Network. Let's shout some of them out. So, of course, we have Statement Games, a fun, free twist on fantasy sports. Make sure you are checking them out. Link is in the bio. We have our AATSportsNetwork.com shop. Make sure you are going on there. We're going to be adding new designs as the season starts and cool things happen. So you want to get your designs and your shirts. Symbol.com, the stock market for sports. Use the code AAT Sports when you sign up. Vinny's Pizza and Restaurant off the Iroquois Trail in the Old Town Shopping Center in Allentown. Vinny'sPizzaPA.com, which is right next to Stuff to the Grills, which is also off the Iroquois Trail in the Old Town Shopping Center in Allentown. StuffToTheGrills.com. And don't forget, because I do believe that they extended the deadline. Am I correct about that?
Yes. Only a
So
couple
we
more
are
days you have.
still going to the ultimate bus trip to FedEx Field on September 25th for the Eagles versus the Commanders game. We're getting on a bus in Allentown, and we are riding all the way to FedEx Field, hopefully not leaning on any railings. And we are watching Carson break every bone in his damn body as the Eagles defense shoves their hands down his throat. And we're going to be joined by all of these great podcasts. We're going to be joined by 97.5 The Fanatic. We're going to be joined by Hollis Thomas. Philly Sports Trips is hosting the thing. When you sign up, go to Philly Sports Trip and sign up with AATBirds. Tell them we sent you. Get your tickets because it's going to be awesome. And there's lots of available seats on the bus if you want to sit next to somebody. I have my wife. I'm taking guys. Sorry.
If you say so. There's still time for that. But let's get into the predictions now. So I'll give you Mike's prediction, and then we can then go off ours. But Mike's got the Eagles winning a close game, 24-20. But the Eagles do come away with a 1-0 record. So
really?
Chip, I know you mentioned your thoughts on it. You don't think it's going to be as close as that.
I don't.
And I want to hear a little bit on why that is.
So the Eagles, again, on paper, the Eagles are just so much better than this Detroit team. A Detroit team that again, I watched an entire 5 episodes on this Detroit Lions team, and it's a lot of rah-rah and not a lot of skills, right? So it didn't look like a lot of like good coaching. Like I love Deuce Staley, and Deuce Staley coaches up the running backs, and they get to a certain point. And I love Hank Fraley, and he coaches up the linemen, and they get to a certain point. But from the head coach, it's a lot of like I look at Nick Sirianni and I watch what he does with the wide receivers, and it's skill-based and it's offensive-based. And this is what we do because I am a former wide receiver. How is the tight end and wide receiver room for the Detroit Lions not better? How is it not better? Because they don't have the talent. Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to go off. He's going to get a good amount of yards. Good on him. But I don't, this is not the same Eagles team as last year. We have a linebacking core. We have threats on each end of the defense, defensive line, linebackers, and in the secondary. The offense has weapons for days and arguably the best offensive line in football. There is no way that this game should be close. Keyword is should. I have this game. The only way it'll be close is if, as I mentioned, the rust is a factor. And I do feel like rust will be a factor for at least a quarter and a half. I hope I'm wrong, but I do feel like it's going to be a question for a quarter and a half. I have this game at 35-10.
Okay. And again, I will be fine with that. A nice easy Sunday to start off is totally fine by me. But the way I see the game going, I think it'll be close. And then towards the third and fourth quarter, the Eagles will, basically they'll have a couple scores and basically
they'll be the better team.
Yeah. Now I'm winning by double digits, 31-20. I feel at the end of the game, you may see Detroit get a touchdown late. So maybe 31-13, they get a touchdown late to make it look a lot closer than it is. But my emphasis is going to be this. The Eagles are going to be able to get a pass rush on Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions. I think Hassan Reddick is going to have a really good game. I think the one player that is going to have a really good game because he cannot wait to get back on that field is Brandon Graham.
Agreed.
I think Brandon Graham, especially in Michigan, he didn't get to play last year. He went to University of Michigan. He didn't get to play in last year's game because he was hurt. So him coming back home, basically playing in Michigan where he went to college, I feel he's going to show out and he's going to have a very, very good game, stopping the run, rushing the passer. And that's where I think it's going to be. I understand their weapons. I'm on Ross St. Brown.
Sure.
DJ Chark. I know they have some guys, but if you have the pressure on Jared Goff, you're not going to be able to do anything. You're not going to be able to do what you want to do.
And as soon as the Eagles can get enough scores ahead, it's going to take the ball out of DeAndre Swift's hands and force Jared Goff to be back there throwing. and he's got a offensive line that's strung together with tape right now.
Yeah, and the other thing is Jason Kelsey did announce that he will be starting. He will be there. So
I can't wait for them to retire the number 62 when he retires.
Yeah, I don't want to get into talking about retiring numbers because I feel like Eagles have too many. That could be another show. In the next offseason, we can talk about all that and all the numbers that they hold aside. But no, hopefully it's a nice, easy, painless week one. That's what we'd like. I do see Julie's got 27-7 Eagles. Again, let's hope for a nice, easy win. That'll be
great.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be great going into a Monday night showdown with the Vikings, which is going to be a tough game. But no, it's just let's hope for a good game, and we will be back for after the game. We'll talk about what happened. We'll break it down X's and O's, give our analysis and everything. But with that, it's basically coming to the point where we end this. But as always, I do want to say, as I made the moniker and I want to keep it going, AATBirds is all birds all the time.
That's true. And we got people that say that.
And we do. Don't worry. We'll let the people know a little bit more of that. It'll be posted in the next coming weeks.
Got it. Well, listen, at some point, hopefully tomorrow, we're going to do the weekly pickoff season 2, me versus the wife. I just helped her with her first fantasy football draft. So I'll be very curious to know how she does there. But are you ready for your fantasy team? Just yes or no. How do you feel about your fantasy teams this year?
I got 2 teams, 2 dynasty leagues. So I feel pretty good. We'll just say that. I feel really good.
I feel pretty good about mine. I have 3. And that's funny. I sent each of my drafts over to Mike when it was all said and done. And I was like, hey, give me a grade. And he gave me a letter grade. And it was the exact same letter grade that the sites gave me. So I don't know. Mike's probably pretty good at this fantasy stuff. So maybe we should talk to him about it.
Yeah, maybe we should. Maybe next week when he comes on, we can, maybe have him break a couple things down for us.
Who to start, who to sit. Well, listen, I'm done sitting. Go Birds. Positive, very happy. I'll go Birds.
Go Birds.
I'll go Birds.